Over the last several years, it's pretty undeniable that DC has been a disaster, both from a box office standpoint and from the public perception. With all the changeover going, with all the people shifting back and forth, and finally, James Gunn is now in charge of the DC universe. A lot of people aren't quite sure about his vision, especially after he fired Henry Cavill. But over the last several years, one of the bright spots was Shazam. Now, definitely not a movie for everybody, a movie that didn't do gangbusters at the box office, but with only an $85 million production budget to make $360 million worldwide, that was a decent profit for Warner Brothers. So they decided to double down on Shazam with Shazam 2, a higher production budget, expecting to get a bigger return. It looks like that may have been a massive mistake. Shazam 2 tracking for one of the worst openings in DCEU history, and as of right now, a couple weeks out from its release, it's projected to have a lower opening weekend than the first Shazam movie. That would be a catastrophe. Now, this could be indicative of a lot of things, but one of the main key points is that when people look at DC, when people look at the path, why would they get excited for this? Knowing that it's just probably going to be erased, knowing that they're going to change all these different things. The people at Warner Brothers, James Gunn with his DC vision, they've essentially said, hey, it may or may not connect to what we're doing. I don't know. No promises. So a lot of people aren't going to be invested in this. And quite frankly, as we've seen time and time again, people are just kind of sick and tired of it. But look at these numbers. Shazam! Fury of the Gods is tracking to open with one of the smallest opening weekends in DCEU history. Last November, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's passion project Black Adam hit theaters and lost money. We talked about this despite the fact that The Rock's PR team had a fake article written with fake numbers. In reality, once we saw the numbers for this movie, it lost close to $100 million for Warner Brothers. And when it comes to Shazam 2, if it keeps tracking this way, it might be another loss for Warner Brothers. They can't afford to have many more flops like this. The future of the DCU is being forged by new DC Studios co-CEOs James Gunn and Peter Safran. Chapter 1, Gods and Monsters, will be kicked off with Superman Legacy after this year's Flash resets the universe. However, this soft reboot doesn't come without confusion, like Blue Beetle and Aquaman Lost Kingdom release later this year. Primarily, a film like Shazam 2 is completely lost in the DC cosmos, leading to poor box office expectations. According to Box Office Pro's latest box office forecast, Shazam! Fury of the Gods will earn between $43 and $52 million during its 3-day opening weekend. Now, if it falls somewhere within that, this is a disaster for Warner Brothers. It's a disaster for DC, because when we look at the first one, again, $363 million at the worldwide box office. Of course, Black Adam made a little bit more than that. However, it had a much higher production budget. So when you look at something like this, $85 million production budget, break-even point likely somewhere between, $210 million and $250 million. This made over $100 million for DC. That's why they wanted to do a second one. That's why they gave the second one a $125 million production budget, banking on the fact that, well, there's no way it's going to make less than the first one, right? Well, if it tracks like this, and it certainly probably will not have the same hold that it had that we saw with Shazam 2. That was around a 53% hold, something like that. Let's look. 54% hold weekend to weekend. There's no way that this movie is likely to have something like that unless it blows people away. But now we're looking at Shazam 2 having one of the lowest openings in history, lower than it was 4 years ago. And if all that tracks, if all that holds up, this movie would not come close to the original run for Shazam, the first Shazam. That was not in the cards for DC, but now it looks like they might have to deal with another flop, another failure, another movie losing money at the box office for DC. The high-end projection of $52 million wouldn't even reach the $53.5 million of 2019 Shazam, at the time the DCEU's lowest opening. Now, since then, there have been a couple that are less. Birds of Prey, that was a terrible movie. Similar production budget as Shazam, didn't make its money back. I think it made less than $200 million in its run. And then, of course, we have The Suicide Squad and Wonder Woman 1984. Both of those released like on the same day that they came out on HBO Max as well. Both of those did not do well in the box office at all. Both of these lost money. And of course, that had a significant impact, the fact that it released on HBO Max on the same day. A low-end result here by the Zachary Levi-led flick would be a supersized failure. God, there's so many editing problems in here. Just reading it. Do these people not read these things before they post it? At least Birds of Prey had the excuse that it was R-rated. Well, I guess Joker was R-rated too. That made $1 billion. That's not really an excuse. In 2023, a lighthearted hero may really feel the effects of fans losing interest in the current DC slate in lieu of Gunn's future plans. And I personally think that that's probably the primary reason we're seeing this. I think that when you have people come out and saying we're doing a whole new DC thing, we're not really being specific about what we're rebooting, who we're keeping, it's probably really hard for people to get invested in something like that when they're used to like this story that's being told, all these things being connected. Now knowing that it might mean nothing, I think that's going to turn a lot of people off. But here we are. Looks like another disaster. More bad news for Warner Brothers and for DC. James Gunn is going to have a lot of work to do to prove that he can do this, to prove to fans that he's going to do something that people are going to love. I don't know if he's up to the task. I don't know if a lot of fans think he's up to the task. But when it comes to Shazam 2, only a couple weeks from release, more bad news for Warner Brothers. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Smash a like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, share this video out there, and I'll talk to you later.